In today's video, I will be going over pros and cons of every single Hydro character in Genshin Impact. I will also be making this video for every character of each element in the upcoming days, so consider subscribing so you don't miss out on those videos. With all that being said, let's get into it. Starting off with Tartaglia, aka Child, and for his pros I would have to say he's a strong multi-target damage dealer, fast Hydro applicator that enables support DPS unit potential, and has flexible team comps, not constellation reliant, and works really well at C0, and has high damage potential from his burst, having the capabilities of one-shotting enemies. And for his cons, he has lower individual output for dealing damage compared to other 5-star characters, and has a high technical learning curve because of melee stance being tricky to use, and you shouldn't stay too long in that form or you will hinder your DPS in places like the Abyss, since the cooldown will be longer if you stay in your melee stance for too long and forces rotation management, but he's still a solid unit and a good character that deals a large amount of damage in the correct team. Next character would be xingqiu. For his pros, he deals one of the largest amounts of single target damage as an off-field character, and almost all the teams can benefit from having him on the team. Even without constellations, he is still really useful in reaction-focused teams, and I would have to say he's a free-to-play friendly unit with a good number of weapon options being available for him at all times. For his cons, he needs a lot of energy recharge stat to help your teammates with his burst, has long cooldown for his elemental skill and burst, which in some cases can cause DPS loss for your team, and he is not an AoE character, meaning that he shines mostly against single target opponents, but every account can benefit from having him, so don't let this change your mind about building him, because he's a game changer for every single account, whether you're a new player or a veteran, it doesn't matter. Our next character is similar to xingqiu, especially considering her burst, and she is none other than Yelan. And for the pros for this character, her elemental skill can be used to target a good range of enemies around you. Pure HP scaling makes her free-to-play friendly, since attack stat is irrelevant for her to deal massive amounts of damage, and elemental skill can be used for fun in the open world, and it's quite fast. And she works great with free-to-play weapon options like Favonius Warbow, which everyone has a copy of this weapon after finishing Mondstadt Archon Quest, and she has the potential of creating one of the strongest duos in the game with xingqiu, known as Double Hydro, and can dish out massive amounts of damage against most enemies. And she can be both on-field and off-field DPS and works well in both aspects. For cons, I would have to say she lacks defensive utility, unlike xingqiu, and if you have C6 xingqiu, she may not be as necessary for your account, although it would be nice to have both, but pure HP scaling limits buffs available to Yelan, and she requires high energy, makes it needed to use additional Hydro units with her, or Favonius and Sacrificial Bow is necessary if you're not getting enough energy from your artifacts. Our next character is Barbara, and for her pros, cheap source of Hydro application, and being a free character is always nice, and she has good free-to-play options for weapons if you're dealing with corrosion effect, and can revive fallen teammates with her C6. There's not a lot more that I can say for this character, so let's get into the cons. Her Hydro application is limited and inconsistent, and her true healing and support potential is locked behind constellations, and she is not viable to be your main Hydro DPS character, and elemental burst besides healing isn't that useful overall. Next character on the list, Candace. She has a unique kit with Hydro infusion capabilities that she brings to your team, and cheap to build with a lot of weapon options, and makes her free to play friendly overall, and her counter capability is pretty cool, similar to Beto. And for cons, she requires high energy recharge and has low personal damage and constellation reliant to reach her true potential, which makes her not reliable unit if you can't get the C6. And if you know anything about 4-star characters, getting the C6 for 4 stars is sometimes even harder than getting it for 5 stars, since you're not guaranteed to get her at every temple even if she's on that banner, so it's not reliable to have a character that only shines at C6. Next character is Mona. For pros, She's a great and flexible support in most teams and can be used in popular freeze teams with Ayaka or Ganyu and can provide huge damage increase for your team, doesn't require a lot of on-field time and can quickly rotate and use your burst and skill. And if you're looking to dealing great damage for screenshots, to flex with your friends or anything like that, she's a great unit for that reason as well, and doesn't require 5-star high investment weapons if you're using her as a support. And she can be really useful with 3-star weapons like Thrilling Tales. As for cons, she requires some practice to get used to the alternate sprint mechanic, and building her as a main DPS is semi-expensive, and she will never have her own banner, making her hard to get, and mostly hard to get constellations for her as well. Next one on the list, Kokomi. For pros, one of the few characters that can offer a similar Hydro application to xingqiu as an off-field unit. She has comfortable and easy gameplay since you can just use her as a healer that also applies Hydro off-field. She can also be considered a jack of all trades and can be fit into many team comps due to her kit, and she is quite cheap and low investment to build as a support. And for her cons, she has underwhelming damage potential, which is understandable for a healer, but if you're trying to have her as a main DPS, you might need to reconsider. And the low energy regeneration from her skill makes her burst unreliable in every rotation, and remember I said jack of all trades, well that makes her master of none. So she can get outclassed by some other Hydro units if damage is preferred over healing, and even with high investment she won't drastically improve, making her not worth the high investment, but still a really solid unit for most teams that needs healers with some Hydro application capabilities, so overall a good unit. Our next character, Nilou. For pros, Bountiful Core's damage is quite good, provided enemies are grouped to where you are proccing multiple instances of Bloom, and she has free-to-play friendly team potential consisting of Barbara, Dendro Traveler, Collie, and her, and a relatively low investment build requiring HP stat and maybe some elemental mastery as a subset, and you don't even need to invest so much for her talent levels, and the animation of her attacks are really unique and beautiful. As for her cons, restricted unit at her core due to her passive forcing you to use her mostly with Hydro and Dendro units. As a Hydro unit that you would expect to be flexible with most teams to enable reactions, she is quite niche, although can be used in other teams, she will not provide the same value as her Dendro and Hydro teams, and her signature weapon makes a big difference, meaning that for true potential, her free-to-play options aren't close to that weapon. Overall, I would say if you have good Hydro and Dendro units, Nilou is a must-have. But if you don't use Dendro and Hydro units together, I would say you should hold off when you see Nilou banner and maybe not pull for her. But I personally like this character and I already have her on my account. Next character is Ayato. And for pros, he provides high and strong damage output for single and multiple targets, and easily accessible AoE damage, and provides valuable off-field Hydro application for his teammates to enable reactions, and wide variety of team compositions are available for him, and has flexible and resin efficient artifact choices, and not constellation reliant as a sub DPS, meaning he is a very good unit even at C0. And for cons, free-to-play weapon options are not really good for him to see the true value and synergize with him, and other 5-star Hydro units like Child can outperform him in the same role of on-field DPS, and Kokomi, xingqiu, and Yelan will outperform him when it comes to off-field Hydro application, and generally requires continuous on-field time to get the most value out of his elemental skill, and overall not the best Hydro unit to have, but still a solid unit if you like the character, the design, and things like that. Now last but definitely the least, Hydro version of Traveler. And for pros, I would have to say this version of Traveler doesn't have any in my humble opinion, because then I would have to be insulting every single Hydro unit in the game. And for cons, you have to stay stationary to deal mediocre Hydro application, has low damage potential overall, and damage split scales from HP and attack percentage, so I would highly recommend not building or going for this character, because it's just a waste of material and time in my opinion, and you can let me know if you disagree with this. And with that, we briefly mentioned the pros and cons of each playable Hydro character in Genshin Impact. At the time of recording this video, these are the playable characters, and if you enjoyed and interested in this type of video, consider liking and subscribing, which I highly appreciate every single subscriber, and let me know down below what you want to see next. And until next time, have a good day or night, and peace.